I just didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in organized religion. I just thought everyone was kind of like loony about the whole God situation. I remember looking at this and I was like, that's God? What is going on? I was about to lose my shit. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kayla and today I am going to be talking about my most powerful ayahuasca journey yet. I will be talking to you about my 5th ever ceremony at my 2nd ayahuasca retreat. And before I get started in telling you this story, I just wanted to share a little bit of my background so that this makes a little bit more sense. Not that it could ever make sense to the human brain, but I am telling you my story of my journey in ayahuasca, and I know for a lot of people it isn't going to make very much sense. For me it does, and I'm going to try to put it into words as best as I possibly can describe. That being said, there are going to be some things that I don't feel comfortable sharing on camera, and I hope you can respect that and honor that. I'm just going to share as much as I feel called to share with you. And growing up, I went to church up until I was about like 5-6 years old. And after that, I didn't really go to church anymore. I don't really know why. I never really enjoyed it, to be honest. I enjoyed the free food. I enjoyed the bread of Jesus's flesh, and I enjoyed the juice of Jesus's blood. I enjoyed eating, like that's pretty much it, and I enjoyed coloring at Sunday school, but like other than that, I didn't really enjoy it. I thought it was boring. I enjoyed the singing part, but that's pretty much it. And then I kind of stopped going. My family stopped going. Don't really know why. I think it was kind of after my grandfather had passed away. Through my youth and teen years, I started to develop this belief of, honestly, no belief, being atheist. When I was younger, I did believe in God, but only because my family like put me into church. I was never baptized, but I did go to a Christian church. My dad was Catholic. I think he was baptized Catholic. Still don't know his beliefs. My mom believes in God, and I started to not believe in God. Like when I was going into like my preteen years, when I was a teenager, I just didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in organized religion. I had a lot of fears, and not necessarily fears, but I just thought everyone like was kind of like loony about the whole God situation, and I really like genuinely thought that the Bible was just a story, just a book written by some guy. That's just what I thought. I was like, yep, this story was just here and everybody believes in it for some reason because they don't want to deal with the real life shit in this world, and they want something to believe in so that they feel good about themselves, that they're gonna go to heaven if they do something good, or they feel like someone's gonna go to hell if they do something bad for them, so then it just makes them feel better. And that was my belief system. I was very atheist and did not believe in God whatsoever. I thought of people who went to church, honestly, I had a viewpoint looking at them very poorly because my views on abortion and, you know, very political beliefs that, you know, I'm not very much a political type of person or a person to be talking about politics. I saw that there was no separation between the church and the state, and that frustrated me. Fast forward into when I started like spirituality, which was in 2020. I think even before that, I kind of thought that there was something. I didn't necessarily think that there was a God, but I thought, okay, there's source. I didn't necessarily think anything created this world, but I just believed in energy. I believed in some type of source of energy, and I believed that there was something. And I was more agnostic. So if you don't know what agnostic means, it is a belief system of that isn't really a belief system. It's not atheist, but it's also not believing. And it's very much like in the middle of like, it's very much flowy. Like I'm willing to listen to other people's beliefs about their religion. And when I was agnostic, I still kind of believe I am a little bit agnostic, but now my belief system sort of changed a little bit. So I'm kind of adapting. But when I was agnostic, I just kind of listened to other people and said, okay, yeah, that could be true or it could not be. I never really thought there was like a definite answer to anything. I never was like, yes, this is real, you know? It was always up in the air for me. I was always like, okay, that's a possibility, move on, you know, whatever. And it didn't really bother me. It never really bothered me of that I don't know all the answers, because I think I've always had quite a big understanding that our human brains cannot comprehend everything. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe when I die I'll know the answers, maybe I won't, and it's fine, you know? And I know some people can't live with that, but I just kind of decided, you know, there's nothing I can do about it. So, I mean, there was a point in time where I wanted to know every little thing, but that just led me down a path of conspiracies and it just got me nowhere. So that's kind of a brief history of of me and what I've believed in throughout my life, it always frustrated me so much when I did not believe in God, and even when I was agnostic. It frustrated me so much when people would preach to me about God and shove religion down my throat and tell me I had to believe in this or else I was going to hell. It pissed me off. It made me so mad. I remember once I was like 13 years old and I was in an ambulance on my way to a mental hospital. And the EMT in the ambulance told me, she was like, "Do you have a relationship with God?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Do you want one?" And I said, "No." And she left it at that. She didn't really say anything else, but I felt this pressure of her. After the ambulance ride was done, she was like, "You know, just find God." And like she spewed a whole bunch of stuff about God to me. Like, if I find God, I'll feel better. And I was like, oh my God, like this is such bullshit. Like, it made me so mad. I don't like people preaching to me. When I was younger, we used to have like Jehovah's Witnesses coming up to our door and soliciting information to us. And okay, I did not ask your opinion, you know? So there's just instances like that in my life where I felt like I was being preached to, or like I felt like someone was making me out to be a bad person because I wasn't religious. Just the judgment that comes from a lot of organized religions just doesn't sit very well with me. I think that really strayed me away from the belief of God. And I'm also very much the type of person where I do not believe in something unless I experience it or unless I see it. That brings me into today's story of how I found God, or how God found me. I don't know which way you want to put it, but that is what happened in my ayahuasca ceremony. So I ask you to listen to this video with a very open mind. I don't want to come at this as if I'm preaching or as if I think I'm right or anything like that, because to be quite honest, like I have no fucking clue. Like, I am not one to sit here and be like, I know all the answers of the universe. I feel like I know a lot because of my experience, but I don't know everything, and I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I do. This is how I have developed a relationship with God. It's interesting because I used to feel like God was talking to me when I was a very small child, and then that went away. And now I feel like it's a very similar feeling to when I was a child. So if you don't know what ayahuasca is, it is a plant medicine that came from the Amazon. It grows in the Amazon, and although I'm not in the Amazon right now, I am in Costa Rica, and I have decided to go to a couple retreats in Costa Rica, the same retreat but a couple different times, to sit with plant medicine ayahuasca. Now, this is a spirit plant, so it's a very motherly, grandmother, feminine energy that comes in. It's very hard to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it, so I'm explaining it the best of my ability. If you want to know more about it, I highly recommend you go watch a video explaining more about it, because this video is going to be a pretty lengthy one in terms of my experience, and I really just want to jump into it because I've already been talking for over 10 minutes. So I'm gonna open my plant medicine journal here. This was on November 10th, 2023, so not too long ago. I don't know when this video will be up, but I'm filming it on the 18th of November. This was my second night of my second ayahuasca retreat, and it was my 5th ever ceremony. And my intention of this ceremony was to get clarity on my career and clarity on how to best be of service to other people and help other people. Previously, if you watched any of my other ayahuasca experiences, you would know that on my 3rd night of ayahuasca, I was begging ayahuasca for my purpose in life, and I was very upset because she just wasn't giving it to me, and I was like ignoring all of the signs of what she was trying to tell me. The reasoning why I see now as to why I was not receptive of my purpose at that time was because I was not receptive to even considering the fact that God was real. I think everything happened for a reason. Was I very upset on my 3rd night? Yes, I was. Everything happened the way it needed to happen. That being said, let's jump straight into my ayahuasca experience. Also, I want to give a big thank you to you for watching this long into the video. I just felt like I needed to explain all of that to give a little bit of insight on my story and why things happened the way it happened for me. So let's get right into it. I'm reading off of my journal here just because I want to be able to say everything in the order that hopefully it happened. I don't know if everything's in the order of which it happened, but honestly, just for myself, I really love documenting my experiences via video so that I can watch back and be like, oh yeah, I remember that, because writing it down is a very different thing for me. So selfishly, I want to explain everything in the order that it happened, or at least as close as possible to the order that it happened. For the first 30 minutes of ceremony, after I drank the first cup, I didn't really feel anything, and that's pretty typical with ayahuasca. You typically don't feel it until, you know, whenever. I've had it hit me instantly before, but this time I'd say it was about 30 minutes. Not quite sure because I had no concept of time, but yeah, I think it was about 30 minutes. And then all of a sudden, I just felt so like insanely powerless. Like no power within myself, just completely drained, completely powerless. And I was like, oh my God, why am I feeling like this? And like, I just start crying, like just start bawling my eyes out. And I was just thinking and thinking and thinking of all of the times where I, as a woman, felt so powerless because of the actions of men. And if you watched my previous video, you'll know that I had such a deep appreciation for men in that ayahuasca ceremony, but in this ayahuasca ceremony, the stuff beneath the surface was coming up and just was really sitting there, and I had to sit with that for a while. It was quite annoying, if I'm gonna be honest. I was like, oh my God, why am I feeling this? Because this was bringing up so much in terms of sexual trauma. It was bringing up stuff in terms of job situations where I didn't get a certain job because a man got that job, or I saw a woman receive a job, but she had to do X, Y, and Z more than a man to be able to keep that job or to be able to keep that pay raise. And I've just seen so much in this world of women being let down by men. I've just witnessed so much of that. So I felt so powerless in that moment, and so powerless just in general. These situations always made me feel so small, like I couldn't do anything, or like I didn't have any power to do anything in life. And it affected me in ways that I didn't realize. So I was staring at this beautiful altar in the middle of the circle, and I was just crying, just like tears flowing down my face. Like, if you know what an ayahuasca cry feels like, you know, but it just comes right out. Like, it just really just like flows out of you. It's a different type of cry, I feel. It's very much needed, for sure. So I was just staring at the altar and crying. And then I started to get a little worried that like I would feel this way through the whole ceremony, and that I would feel this way forever. I was like, oh my God, like all I want is clarity on like my career and what I'm doing in life, and like all these different things. Like, I just want to be able to help people in the best possible way that I can. But I also need to survive too, you know, like I also need to be able to put food on the table and like, you know, do all these things and be able to survive. So in my head, I'm just like, oh my God, like all I wanted was clarity. Like, that's all I wanted. And I just kept thinking like, oh my God, what if I just feel powerless after this ceremony and I have nothing to say to anybody except like I just feel powerless, you know? That's what I started to feel like. I was just worried that I was going to continue to feel like that forever, and it would never go away. But one thing I've learned with ayahuasca is that everything does pass. Everything passes eventually. You know, it might be a couple days, it might be a year or so, I don't know. I mean, I haven't gone a year after ayahuasca yet. Like, my first ceremony was in March, and then the last retreat was November now. So you never know, and you can have epiphanies in different moments, and you know, it's never like you never always just understand in the moment. Sometimes it's always like in the future, and then you're all of a sudden like, oh my God, I know what that meant now. And maybe you just never do, but yeah, so that's one thing I've learned. I realized that, okay, so this is going to be very big for me to share. I've never shared this on the internet. I'm a little bit afraid, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little bit afraid to share this because this is something very big that has happened in my life. And I guess I'm afraid of judgment. I'm afraid of people thinking of me in a different way than they did before. People thinking that I'm capable of doing something so terrible because of my family. I guess I've been quite ashamed of my family and very disappointed in the way that things went down. But I'm going to share this because this is part of my story. This is part of my ayahuasca experience. And if this can help somebody else who is going through something similar, or give somebody a different perspective of somebody without judgment, then I'm willing to share. When I was in 8th grade, it was the summer, going into summer of 8th grade. I think it was like before before summer started. I'm not gonna give the whole story, but I'll just tell you what happened. And maybe at a later date, if I feel comfortable, I can share my story. My uncle killed my aunt next door to my house. I was also the first person in my family to find out, and I was in 8th grade. The whole entire town knew. I don't know if they knew it was my uncle, but I know some people did know, and I kept my mouth shut about it. It was the talk of the entire school at the time, because I grew up in a very small town and things like this did not happen. It was all over the news. I heard about, people in school talking about it, making up stories of things that weren't true, that I knew weren't true, but I just couldn't say anything because I knew if I said something that I would get bullied, because I was getting bullied, and I knew that it was in my best interest to keep my mouth shut. So I had to listen to these people talking about things about my aunt that were not true. It was very hard for me because I realized in my ayahuasca ceremony how powerless my aunt felt towards the end of her life. I'm going to be talking about domestic violence, so if this triggers you, I recommend to fast forward the video or click off of the video. My uncle ended up beating her to death. Yes, this is my blood uncle. This is my mom's brother. It was a very tough thing that my family had to go through. In my ayahuasca ceremony, I saw what was happening when she was dying. She even said the words, "You are going to kill me," to him. And I just felt so insanely terrible. I've always felt terrible about this situation, but this was very much different. I saw what happened. I grieved all over again. And it did hurt that I was not allowed to go to her funeral. It also made me realize that everything in life is ceremony, and that a funeral is part of ceremony. And I know this is going to be hard for some people to hear, but a funeral is celebrating someone's life of what they experienced in that body, celebrating the fact that they're going to be in a new body soon, and they're going to be able to have an entirely different experience. And that is some knowledge that I gained from ayahuasca. This might be the hardest video I've had to make, but I want to make it. I'm sweating because I'm so nervous. I realized that my grandmother, which is my uncle's mother, felt so powerless in this situation that she ended up calling the police to check on them because she knew something was going on. My uncle was on bath salts, on drugs and alcohol. It hurt me to know how capable a man is of harming somebody. It is absolutely terrifying to me and has been terrifying to me. And I think that's why deep down I have been so afraid of men. I've been catcalled. I've been sexually, assaulted many times. I have been hurt by men a number of times, so I have a lot of evidence to support a belief of being afraid of men. I'm trying to change that and I'm working on it, and I will say right now I do have a lot of men in my life that show me otherwise, and I am so grateful for that. Yeah, my grandma felt very powerless because the police did not have a warrant to go inside. They were living in a camper, and they didn't have a warrant to go inside, so my grandma felt very powerless, like she couldn't do anything. She even went up to the door and asked my uncle where my aunt was, and my uncle said she was passed out. Whether that means she was dead or not, I don't know. But it sucks knowing that this could have been prevented, and because of laws in place, and because women aren't necessarily, I don't want to say important, but it feels as though we aren't important in society, that our needs go without notice. And things like this happen because the laws are meant to protect men and not women. I felt very powerless, and I felt a sense of emptiness for, I would say, probably about an hour. And on ayahuasca, that felt like an insane amount of time. I don't know how long I felt like this, but I just felt completely empty, almost as if ayahuasca was stripping me from every belief system that I had around men, because I needed these belief systems to be ripped away from me in order to be receptive to the higher power. If I do not respect other men in this life, I am not respecting God. And I didn't know that at the time, but every man and woman on this earth is a part of God and we are all his children. And I learned that. I learned that when I was a kid, but I didn't necessarily believe it. And now it is very ingrained in my system that that is what it is. Again, I'm not telling you this is how it is, but this is how my experience was and how it is for me. I then started to feel like ayahuasca was gonna show me my purpose soon. I was like, yes, this is it. Like, I feel so powerless and I'm ready to feel powerful. Like, I felt a sense of like, this is gonna happen. I'm finally gonna step into my power. I'm finally gonna, and what's interesting about this is I was at a retreat in Sedona. It was Aaron Dowdy's live event, and I had done a somatic release breathwork session, and in that somatic release breathwork session, I had spoken to my deceased aunt, and she told me what my purpose was, and she told me my purpose was to help women step into their power. I think I definitely believe that, and I know that because I felt so powerless in my life, and I just want to help other women be able to step into their power and live the best life they possibly can. I think I just didn't have the clarity or know how to do so. I kind of had a feeling like, yes, ayahuasca is gonna tell me exactly what I need to know. She's gonna tell me everything. She's gonna map out this huge plan for me to have a big success in life, and this is how it's gonna be, and that's what I thought. And I was like, she's gonna give me every little detail that I need to do, and I was ready for business advice, I was ready for that type of advice. And I remember she kept telling me, she's like, not yet. And I'm I felt so impatient, but she was definitely teaching me patience. I learned how to be very patient in this ceremony. There were several times where I was like, okay, I'm ready. And she was like, nope, not yet. She ended up telling me to pick up my labradorite stone, and that this would show me my power. And it is this stone that I'm holding right here. You see the flash? It is such a beautiful, beautiful stone. I don't know if you can necessarily see how beautiful it is on camera, but this stone is just so magical and probably my favorite stone to date. I kept holding it and I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. This is it. I'm finally, this is gonna be the best moment of my life. I'm finally gonna find my purpose. And I was so incredibly excited. I still felt so empty. And I'm like, okay, ayahuasca, when is it gonna be time? And she kept saying, not yet, be patient. She said, it is not time yet. And I feel looking back at it, I thought that she was going to almost put my aunt on the phone, right? I thought I was gonna talk to my aunt, and I was like, yes, my aunt is gonna come in and show me exactly what I need to do. And I felt a sense of that I was going to talk to someone else other than ayahuasca. And I thought it was gonna be my aunt. And so I'm sitting there waiting, I'm like, okay, where is she? I'm ready for this, I'm excited. And I just felt a sense of emptiness, and I'm like, come on, I kind of felt like it was a movie, and I knew the ending almost. I knew a little bit of the ending. And it was not that at all. You can't really expect anything with ayahuasca because she will give you something entirely different. For some reason, I thought my aunt was gonna come through, and she did not. I laid down while holding this crystal, and I started to get visions. And this is the most important part of the story, because when I was getting these visions, I saw something that looked like God's face, of what you would think God would look like or something. It was a little bit different than that, but I kind of just had a sense of knowing that this was God. And it looked like a painting to me. It was very much it looked like a painting of his face in the middle. And then there was blue around it of it was like the water of the ocean mixed with the sky, and had some clouds and birds and flowers, and it was just the most beautiful visual I have ever seen in my life. And I just felt a sense that divine masculine energy was with me, which was very interesting because ayahuasca presents a very feminine energy. So I had a knowing of someone else is here. And it didn't really click that it was God yet. It was kind of well, that looks like God. That looks like someone who would be a god or something. But I'm like, okay, whatever. I was kind of brushing it off because religion isn't really my thing, So I was just kind of okay, whatever. All of a sudden, he started talking to me. And I think one of the first things he said was oh, my child. And I heard it via my ears, auditory sounds from him, a very deep voice, very calming, very relaxing, a very non-judgmental voice. And I always thought if God were to be real, I was like, is he judgmental? Does he really love everyone? Does he, just all these things, because in religion, like organized religion, it seems so judgmental, and it seems like God only loves you if you do X, Y, and Z, and so I had a sense of fear almost, and I was like, oh my God, like, is this really happening? Is God really real? And am I really experiencing this right now? Because like me going into an ayahuasca ceremony, like I am not thinking about God ever. This is not even in my psyche. This is not in my brain. You ask any of my friends, any of my family, I don't talk about God. And if I do, I say I don't believe in him. It's silly. It's stupid. Like it's just a story. That was my belief. Like I really just did not believe in God. And so I always respected other people's belief systems and etc., and let them talk if they want to talk, but I just never resonated. Hearing God's voice, I was like, well shit, this is revolutionary for me. He told me a lot of things that I now remember from a past life. He told me what my first life was. He also told me what Haruki's first life was. I won't really be going into detail about this because I feel it's not important for anybody else to know other than me and him. I gained a lot of insight of some mistakes I made in a previous life. That was my first life that I was ever created in. And I know my name, like I know my original name, which is really interesting. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that. And I gained a lot of information and knowledge. He told me a couple of things that would give me the sense that I am being taken care of by God. It gave me clarity on, I don't have to worry about survival. I don't have to worry about food, water, shelter. God will provide that for me and Haruki, and everything comes from God as long as we are stepping into our path and believing and following our mission. I remember apologizing to him. I said, I'm so sorry for not believing in you because, I'd be talking shit about God. Like, I'm sorry for talking shit. I'm sorry I didn't believe in you. Sorry for all that. And like, I truly meant it. Like, I was like, oh boy, like, I am so sorry. And he was like, he literally told me, he was like, it's okay. I made you that way. I made you that way so that you can be of service to other people and not be preaching and not be too much for others to handle. Like, I got a sense of like, that I didn't necessarily have like a purpose. Like, the purpose of life is to just live an experience. And I think I had a very hard time understanding that because I've had people tell me that before and I'm like, yeah, whatever, come on, like I definitely have a purpose, like come on now. But I think that's very true in a sense. Our purpose is to just live and experience life, but he sent me here on a mission, and he sends a lot of people here on a mission. And he worded it as mission. My mission is to lead people to source. And now I understand why some people in religions feel the need to recruit people to their religion, right? It's so funny because I think it was the day before I had a conversation with somebody at the retreat who believed in God. Their family didn't like certain thing, like the way that they lived their life, and they said, oh, God's gonna send you to hell and blah blah blah, all these things, right? And I told this guy, well, when people are very preachy like that, my belief was that they don't feel like they believe in God enough themselves, that they need other people to believe in God to almost make what they feel true, like make like almost confirmation in a sense, like, okay, God is real, other people believe in him, and it doesn't come from within themselves. And I think part of that is true to an extent, but I also do understand that God does send people here on a mission to connect with source and to be able to live their best possible life. And my connection with God has definitely, I can't even describe it into words, but it has definitely made my life better for sure. And just knowing that someone is there protecting me always. I think part of my mission is to come at this with a sense of openness and just share my story, and maybe people will resonate and maybe they won't, and that's okay. And I don't need them to. I don't need anybody to believe in God for me. Like, I could literally care less. All I care about is people being the happiest they could possibly be and living this life in the most happy way possible. And if that means that they don't believe in God while they're doing it, then that is okay. That is what is meant for them, and that is what God created them to live like. You know, not everybody needs to believe in Him right off the bat. They might believe in Him in a next life or a next life or a next life. Eventually they will. Eventually they will come around. Eventually they will see that He's there. And it's not when we die when we realize, because we get reincarnated into different lives. And I sort of believed in that before ayahuasca, and now I definitely believe in that. I have like pretty good confirmation that that is what it is, based on my experience. And God did tell me that, and He said that you get reincarnated into different lives, and pretty much it's like life is almost like a game. That's the best possible way to describe it. It's like you're kind of like leveling up, and you can level down at times, you can level up at times. One thing, if you take anything away from this video, the one thing that I learned is that we are on Earth, and Earth is created to be heaven and hell at the same exact time. Now, I know that sounds pretty maybe strange from the way that you've been believing. No matter what your belief system is, I know that that sounds a little woo-woo and out there and like, yeah, okay, whatever. Because that's what I would think too. Like, if I didn't go through this experience, I'd be like, okay, whatever you say, like, you know, I'd be like, whatever. But we get to decide what we experience. I had asked God about hell, and I'm like, so is it this burning place? Because like I always thought that like if heaven were real, it would be up in the sky, just like we're told, right? Which like doesn't really make much sense to me, but whatever. And that if hell was real, it's in the ground burning. I asked God, I was like, well, what about hell? Is that like a real thing? And is that like how people know it as? And are we, like, if we go to hell, are we really gonna burn like for eternity? And He said no. He said that hell is not like that at all, and He didn't really say anything about the devil. I don't think the devil is anything like we imagine, but He said that there are dark entities. What I gathered from this information is that the dark entities are not nearly as important as the positive entities. I've always known that like everybody who believes in something technically believes in a very similar thing, and it's just different terminology. And other people's hell will be their personal hell. So whatever you think of is like the scariest things for you, if that's your reality, then you're living in hell, your own personal hell. It's almost like the frequency chart. It's very vast, so like you could be kind of living in hell, but you could also be kind of living in heaven at the same time. You could be somewhere in the middle, or you could just be in pure heaven, like, which is what I feel like I'm in right now. Like, I feel like hell comes in at some points, but like I feel like the majority is like heaven, and I feel like I'm in the best possible place ever right now. Like, literally, look at this view. I'm showing you this not to be like, oh, like, not to be like, oh, look where I am, like, you know, but to say you can experience this too. You can experience the beauty of life, and you can experience everything. Everything is meant for you to experience. He also said that part of my, like, mission and path is to help women step into their power, because I did ask him about that, and he said that in order for me to help women step into their power, overall their relationship with men needs to change. Otherwise, they can't connect with God, because God is a very divine masculine energy. He does have feminine energy, just like we all do. It's very balanced, but He does bring a very divine masculine energy. So if a woman has very bad relationship to men, she is not receptive to receiving any information from God, and He knows that, and He just doesn't even bother. He just knows that the time will come when it comes, and what is planned or whatever for them. I don't even know if there's necessarily a plan. I don't know if He has a plan. I don't know what that all entails. but I do know what he said to me is that he made me that way. He made me the way where I didn't believe in God so that I could get to this point, and so that I could go through this journey, and so that I could lead people in the best possible way that I feel called to do, because it is never my intention to preach to someone or make someone feel like they have to believe in what I believe in or else they're a bad person, because that is not my belief at all. So I think I did have to go through those things, and I did have to be annoyed with religion and people in general to be able to express myself in this way. I then experienced, as I laid down again, I experienced this insane like download in my body of God just putting information in me. I don't know exactly what this information is, but all I felt was that it was just ingrained in my system, and I felt these waves of energy entering inside of my body. I feel like I'm not a very like analytical person, but I think I am when it comes to my job. And so I asked him, I was like, what exactly do I need to do? I need to know details. I need to know what type of videos to make. I need to know what type of things I need to be selling. I need to know how much I need to be selling them for. I need to know every little detail. I need a plan, God. Like, I need you to map out a plan for me and say, this is what you do, and this is how you're gonna be successful, and this is how you're gonna help people. That is what I wanted. And what he told me is, you don't need any of that. And I was like, come on, really? Like, really? And he was like, yeah, you don't need any of that. He said, what I need you to do is to meditate, call him in, and surrender my body just like I do in an ayahuasca ceremony. And he said to let him use me as a vessel so that he can speak through me, and he will give me ideas as I go. It is not my job to come up with ideas. It is not my job to figure out what to say to people. It is my job to just let go, surrender, and just let him speak through me, which is exactly what is happening right now. He also told me that this stone is one of the most powerful stones, is labradorite. It's the most transformational stone ever. And I just knew that in this ceremony, when I picked this up, that I was going to get some really transformative information because of what this stone means. And I started looking at it, I'm like, wow, it does look really magical. And like, while I was tripping, it was just like so intense. And this stone started to get so hot, like insanely hot, like not a warm sensation of like you're holding it for a while, but like it was burning hot as if it had just grown from like lava or something. Like, that's how it felt. It felt so insanely hot, and I felt like that is how I was connecting to God. And he said that different crystals are how you connect with him, and each crystal and each meaning of the crystal brings out a different part of him, because he's not going to give you all of you. He's going to give you a part of him, a part of his energy that you need in that moment. So if I need rose quartz, I'm going to get the loving energy out of him. If I need guidance if I need guidance and transformational information to share with people, I am going to pick up this stone, and this is probably going to be my go-to in every video that I make, because I really feel like God is literally just speaking through me right now. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, this is not me talking, because if this was me talking, my previous ayahuasca videos, I have sat here and read every little thing and then talked, and read every little thing and then talked, because I didn't want to miss anything. This time, everything is coming to me so naturally, and everything is just because I remember it so clearly. So everything is just flowing because I'm surrendering my body. Next to me, there was a girl going through a pretty rough time the entire night. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I was just sending her so much love. Even before the ceremony started, I sent her so much love. I sent another girl so much love because I knew another girl was really going through it. And then I just sent everybody around me so much love to experience in this ceremony. God sent a message to me, and he told me that he has different messengers for different things. You do not always need to be the one telling people something. You can tell someone else something, and that person will relay the information for you. Picture it as a bird, right? And back in the day, we would write letters and we would give it to the bird, and the bird would transport it. The same goes for people. God uses people in order to send them on a mission to relay certain information to others. So God told me to give this stone to the girl next to me that was going through a tough time. And I was thinking there, and I'm like, wow, I made such a connection with this stone, but I really do feel the sense of selflessness in order to give this stone to her if it's going to help her, because I felt like I had already communicated with God in the way I needed to. I understood my mission and I understood what he needed me to do, and I was ready to execute it. I was thinking, and before the ceremony we were told like not to bother other people. If ayahuasca or anyone tells you to do something, not to do it, or to at least tell a helper to see if it needs to be done. Otherwise, like, you might interrupt their ceremony. And when someone's going through something, it may look like they're going through something, but they could be going through the best time ever. That's one thing I've learned with ayahuasca. Like, it looked like she was going through it, but she could have been having a party over there. So I didn't want to interrupt. So instead of giving it directly to her, there was a helper very close to me. She was right next to me. And I asked her, I said, and it's funny, she came around like at the perfect time. Like, she got up from her seat at the perfect time, and I looked up to her. I was like, can you please give this to her? And she looked at the crystal, she looked at her, she looked at me, she took the crystal and nodded her head, and she goes to her. And in my body I said, okay, if she gives it to her, great. If not, great. Whatever needs to happen will happen, and she will be helped in the best possible way possible, right? And I think that helper understood the mission, and we had a connection. And I think God also spoke with her as well. I didn't talk to her about this after. I did get a sense of that after, which I'll explain in a little bit. But yeah, I think she also had that connection with God, and God told her to give the crystal to the woman next to me. So then I realized that we are all in heaven and hell at the same time, and we get to experience the part of this earth that we choose. And our experience in this life leads us to that. Just in a sense of looking at the positives rather than the negatives can give us such a different perspective on the way that we live and what we experience on this earth. And every single detail adds up. Every single thing you put your focus on adds up. So if you think a negative thought, it's not a big deal. We all have them. But if you think negative thought over and over and over and over again, and you go into a spiral, you're most likely going to experience your own personal hell. But if you think positive thought and a positive thought over and over and over and over again, you know, everything in repetition, the more you think, the more you'll experience it. And so it is very interesting how this ties in with the law of attraction, law of assumption, etc. It was just very interesting for me to experience and witness. When I realized I was in heaven, it was like the most liberating experience ever. I literally, like, there was a song that came up, I think it's called Mi Abuela, and this song is very special to me because my previous retreat, everyone was going through it, and then this song came on and everyone was like vibing and like clapping and like patting their lap and like dancing, and it was just such a vibe. And I just love this song so much because it reminds me of that moment. And this song came on and I was about to lose my shit. Like, you know, when your song comes on at the club, it felt like that, but like in a more spiritual setting. And this song came on and I saw like people like standing up and dancing, and I was like, I'm gonna dance. And like, I remember like my last retreat, I was like, dang, I wish I got to dance on ayahuasca, and I just didn't feel called. But this time, this was my moment. This was like, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna stand up, I'm gonna dance. And I just felt so amazing, and I love dancing. And I just like stood up, and like I was kind of like in the middle of the circle, like standing like in front of my bed, like right next to the helper too, like I was so close to her. And I was just like dancing and vibing, and like it was so fun. And I just like, I remember everyone afterwards, they were like, oh my God, I loved seeing you dance. And like, cause like I'm normally like not that expressive with my body in general, but I will dance. Like when I dance, you know, and I love dance. I grew up dancing. So I think that was a very suppressed part of me for a while. After I went through a lot of depression, I kind of stopped dancing. But I definitely want to start dancing more because it is just, it's what I'm meant to be doing. And I think all of us should be moving our bodies in some way, shape, or form. After I got done dancing, I think I went over to the grass, and oh my gosh, I totally forgot about this part. So I went over to the grass, and I was in the grass. I was like playing with this like weed or something, and then like not weed, but like this like grass weed, and then I ended up like, it kind of felt like straw, and I felt like it was like a magic wand. I felt like a fairy, and then I stood up and I was like kind of dancing, and there was like a guy going through it, and like I thought it was Haruki at first, and then I guess it wasn't, but I ended up like after I danced, I went on the ground and I put my knees on the ground and I put my palms on the ground, and I just like felt like I was like sending a message to Haruki, like, it's okay, I love you. And like, I just felt like I was connecting with him when I was connecting with the earth. And I think in some ways that's true, but in some ways I also think that I was probably just tripping really hard. Oh, and then I normally don't get visuals like when I open my eyes. I normally have my visuals when my eyes are closed, but I saw this big tree, like we were on a cliff. So I saw this big tree like in the distance, and I literally saw God's shape like in the tree, and he was like a big glowing like white light almost, but I saw like his facial features and like just like his energy almost, and it wasn't like, there was no other color, it was just white. And then I started to look around me, and like I remember looking at this and I was like that's God, like what is going on? Like it was wild because it was like right in front of me, and I was like, okay, like I said, I'm very much the type of person where I have, like, in order for me to believe it, I have to see it. And that is exactly what God did. He knew that he had to put himself in front of me physically in order for me to witness or experience or understand that this is real. I literally was like, what is going on right now? And I ended up looking at all of the trees around me, and I saw their souls. Like I saw that they had a soul, and it was just like white glowing lights in the trees. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. And like I knew trees are alive, I knew they have feelings, I knew all of this, but I didn't understand that they actually have a soul within them. And I was like, whoa, this is wild. I ended up coming back to my mat, and then I enjoyed the rest of the music. It was like such a vibe. I was really vibing. After ceremony, a girl sat next to me. She feels like my sister now. And like I was just so happy that she was sitting next to me, because I remember like when I got up and I went to the grass, she like took my hand so that I could like move because I was so wobbly, and like I just feel like she's my sister now. And like, yeah, so she was sitting next to me and she's like, is it okay if I sit here? And I was like, yeah. And like we were both vibing to the music, and like we were like one of the last people to leave, but like I was just so happy. And I remember the last time that I did ayahuasca in March, my second ceremony, I was in a negative state of mind almost, where I had too much information and I was just glued to my mat, could not leave. I was the last one to leave the ceremony, and this time it was due to positive reasons, where like it just felt like the best day of my life and I just didn't want to leave. I was like, this is amazing, this space is amazing. I just appreciated everyone, the musicians, the shamans, like everything, and the helpers, just everyone who was a part of this retreat. I just had such an immense appreciation for. A bunch of other girls came over too, and then this guy Matt, I don't know if you know, but Matt Schaefer, he's on YouTube and he has Instagram as well, and he brought us like a plate of fruit, and I just felt like it was God. Like I felt like God gave us the fruit, and I was like, this is the most magical experience ever, because normally we have to like go up on the like to the house to get the food after ceremony, but this time they brought it to us, and I was just like, this is amazing. Like he was like right at your doorstep. Like it was so magical. It was just like food brought right to our feet, and I was like, what the frick is happening right now? I felt so magical. And I just remember like eating the watermelon. I used to not like watermelon. I used to really not like it, and this was the first time that I really loved watermelon. Like I was like, this is the best watermelon ever. I remember kept saying like, thank you God so much for putting all of this like fruit and vegetables on this earth for us to experience. It's so yummy, thank you so much. And like it just, the taste of it was so good, like unlike any other fruit I've ever had in my life. And I was like, wow, like this watermelon is so bomb right now. I remember a bunch of other girls, like a lot of girls actually, I feel like it was like almost like 10 of us. I feel like maybe like 8 of us were like sitting in a circle. I don't know how many, but we were all sitting in a circle and we were just talking, vibing. And I just remember I kept saying, this is the best day of my life. And like people are like, the best like day in ayahuasca ceremony or just like ever. And I'm like, ever. Like, this is the best day of my life. I was more quiet though, like, because I was still taking in the experience and like all the other girls were talking, and I was more quiet because I was just like, I was still going through a process. Like, I definitely still felt the medicine with me. I felt ayahuasca with me still. And I just felt like I was still very much on the medicine. Someone came over and told us that the last shuttle was coming to bring us to our house. And I was like, oh shit, like I better go. And it was like 2 a.m. at this point. Okay, I wanna give this snippet that I totally forgot to share, but I just think it was such a beautiful moment. At the end of the ceremony, the helper gave me back my crystal, and she said, you were a really good neighbor. And I said, thank you, you helped me so much. And she said, well, it wasn't me. And I said, I know, like, I think we both like got each other. So it was just a really beautiful moment that I wanted to share, because I feel like we were both just moving with God. And it's really amazing how what beautiful things can happen when people really, out of the goodness of their hearts and when you're connected with Source, what amazing things can happen. So just wanted to share that. Like around 2 a.m. and I was like, I better go. And so I remember Haruki was like still going through a process like across the room from me, and it was really funny to see. And and we'll talk about this like probably on our podcast on Haruki's channel. It's called The Perfect Podcast, but we're probably going to talk more about this, but I'll give you like a brief understanding of my story and my perspective of this situation. I remember seeing Haruki, and he was like writing something in the air. Like, he was sitting in a chair like straight up, and he was like writing, and I remember looking at him and I was like, whoa, like he's still like tripping hard, like he's still with the medicine. And I was like, oh boy, I'm gonna have to take care of him. And I felt like such a feminine energy within myself too. And I was like, okay, like this is my time to like take care of him and nurture him and, you know, just be the best that I can, like do the best that I can do. I picked up my bed and my pillow and everything, and I put it away. I remember I went over to Haruki, and Haruki's like sitting in a chair with one of the helpers, and the helper's like rolling like tobacco, and it looked like a joint. And but it wasn't weed, but I think it was just tobacco or something. I don't know what it was. And I think they were about to smoke. I have no idea, because I think like he definitely needed to be grounded. And so then Haruki was like on the chair, and literally the helper guy, he was kind of like looking at me. He was like, and I told him, I was like, we have to like go down to the shuttle. And he was like him? And I was like, yeah. And I think the helper was like, oh boy, like he's still tripping, you know? He was like, do you know his name? And I was like, yeah, it's Haruki, I'm his wife. And he was like, oh, like you're married? And I was like, yeah. So he didn't really realize at first that like we were together. And then he looks at him, he's like, Haruki, your wife is here. And Haruki looks at him, he's like, my wife? And then he looks up and he's like, oh, and then he stands up and we have like a big hug. And like I felt like he was like his body felt hard as a rock. Like I never felt like such divine masculine energy in like the physical realm. Like I was like, whoa, crazy. I literally felt like I was like hugging God. When we were walking up the hill, like I literally felt like I was like walking with God. And I just had this sense of like everything is going to be so different, and everything is just going to work out perfectly in the most perfect way possible for us. Even though there might be ups and downs and things that we don't necessarily like, I just had a feeling that like we're just going to be blessed in the future, like is all. Like I just knew in that moment that we are just blessed. We went to the kitchen. Well, I went to grab food because I knew he needed to eat. I was fine, but I was like, he probably should eat something. So he didn't even want to go at first. He just wanted to go down to the house, but I was like, no, let's grab some food. And he was like, do you want food? And I was like, yes. I kind of lied because I was like, yes, I do want food, only because I knew he needed to eat food. So I went to the kitchen, we grabbed some bananas, and he was like staring at this pineapple, this girl, Carly, like helped ground him, and like they were singing, and it was like the most angelic voice I've ever heard from him. I was like, whoa, like you can sing? Like I didn't even realize. It was crazy. We ended up leaving. It kind of took him a bit to like go to the shuttle and stuff because like he was still in very much a process. I remember we went outside at our house that we were staying in, and God told me to pick up the water from the pool and like hold it in my hands, and I literally saw like a glowing light in my hands in this water, and I just put intention in it to just a love intention. And I remember like he told me to like drop the water, and he told me to go over to Haruki and like spray him like this with it. So I looked at Haruki. I don't know why God wanted me to do this, but I looked at Haruki. I'm like, I'm gonna spray you with water, okay? He said yes. And I'm just like going like this to him. On the bed outside, we talked, and then we ended up going back in the house. It's so funny. We're gonna talk about this on our podcast, but we ended up telling some of the girls in the house like our inside joke that we've never told anyone before. He actually told them. So it was interesting. And then we ended up sleeping in the same bed that night because we were on bunk beds, but we ended up just sleeping on the same bed because I was like, you are not able to go up on the top right now, and I probably shouldn't either. So, but yeah, I know this was a very long video, and I really appreciate you for watching to the end. This is probably the most important video I've ever made, and the most personal video I've ever made. So I truly, truly appreciate you watching this video and being so open-minded to watch this video. I know not everybody can have an open mind like you do, so I truly, truly appreciate it. Drop a comment down below of anything that you feel called to share with me. Thank you again for watching. I'll have another video of my next ayahuasca experience on my channel soon, so make sure you turn on post notifications to get notified for that, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an upload. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Bye!